Too often I've seen people talk about the radical left wanting to abolish private property.
They just told me up there they don't care about private property, they will destroy it.
Abolition of private property, you know, that thing that is essential to the fundamental bulwark of freedom.
I love that Antifa just has an absolute respect for people's rights and their private property.
And this is true, but it's not being used in the same way of what is traditionally viewed, which leads to, of course, some understandable confusion. So here's how a socialist such as myself defines it. Bear in mind this all works around the parameters of the capitalist system that we live in. Private property is property which is used to accumulate profit. This can include such examples: a road, a limousine, a railroad, a factory, a restaurant, a production studio, a forest, a lake, oh hell, a mountain. So now we must ask, what is personal property? Personal property is, to put it simply, the things you own, including your house, your car, your camera, your TV, your computer, your bed, your oven, and yes, your toothbrush. But it's worth bearing in mind there is no specific list, so to speak. All these things can technically be used for private profit-making devices, but if you own them individually or as a group for the purposes of use, then no person has a problem with this. The problem arises when the social condition of said property starts depriving people of it for use in the market economy, otherwise known as antagonism. You may ask, but don't they deserve such property, seeing as, you know, they earned it? No! The relations of private property are entrenched in violence and enclosure. The commons formerly used for the way of free access were gradually churned away through legal acts or via violent revolution by merchants. As an experiment, go talk to a capitalist and ask him how he came to garner such property. Then ask him how his forebearers came to garner it. And when they eventually come to the end, they should tell you that it was probably garnered by violence, in which case, challenge him to a duel. Now this can raise some problematic situations, so for example, what if somebody owned 1,000 acres of land and used it entirely for the purposes of leisure, without making any money off of it? Well, then you might need to ask, how on earth is somebody supporting 1,000 acres of land without putting it to any use? And probably what comes of this is that they are exploiting profit in other ways to supplement this. In which case you need to ask them whether or not they can justify 1,000 acres of land simply for their own personal leisure. Or can it be put to a better measure? Now obviously no individual can constantly own a railway for personal use, which is why there's a third type of property, collective property, whereby it is owned by a group or and for society at large. The end goal of this is our belief that private property should be transferred over to the workers' use so that it can be used collectively for a common good, specifically the means of production, or basically how everything comes to be created in the first place for process in the economy. And in many leftist minds to later be used in conjunction with a revolution of sorts to transfer over into communism. There are of course many nuances that come with this question, such as occupancy and use, but this video isn't going to go into the detail of such things, merely describing the basic principles of private versus personal. If you want to find out more about the nuances, I suggest you go to Reddit or Anarchist FAQ. So in summary, we want their property, we don't want yours. Apart from Sargon's.
My thanks.
Il est un produit merveilleux, expérimenté par la science, et qui pour nous les miséreux fera naître la dépendance.
You know, maybe for the sake of semantics, we should just call it capitalist property and leave it there, because, you know, it makes life so much easier.